Well, thank you so much for joining us today and coming on to talk about the all-important call center that a few years ago people thought it was going to go away, and it's only gotten more important over the years. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Don't you remember back, I think probably 2008, 2009, everybody thought call centers were going away. Everybody was going to be online. It was going to be an obsolete channel. And especially during COVID, we're finding that is not the case. So.
No, not at all. And then of course we all started putting, the easy call on our mobile phone button, right? Because people are trying to drive and book a hotel or whatever. So thankfully that's hopefully saved a lot of accidents, I would hope. But the first question I want to ask you that I ask everybody is just, how are you and your family through COVID and everything that's transpired? I can't believe now it's been the past 6 months, right? So tell us how it's going for you.
Yeah, it's been going good. I feel like we now, what are we, 5 months in, everybody has been impacted in one way or another, both personally and professionally. Unfortunately, my son tested positive for COVID back in July. Thank goodness he didn't have any bad symptoms or anything, but yeah, it's been rough last several months, watching an industry that I grew up in be so impacted by this. But we're super lucky at Navis. We had some furloughs. We've been able to bring a lot of people back, and we are probably more optimistic than we've been in a while as we approach this next year. So that's what keeps me getting out of bed every morning and excited. Yeah. So.
Well, I think you also built a new house during this time as well. That looks also beautiful.
I highly don't recommend building a house during a pandemic, but little did I know. I had no idea what was coming when we broke ground in January. But yeah, so that was fun. It's crazy when you think of how many industries have been impacted by this. Obviously ours, the hospitality industry, it runs super deep. The cut's been really deep, but yeah, every industry getting supplies and whatnot. It's been interesting. So still remaining optimistic.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we've got. We got to hold on to hope, and any bit of positive news that we have is something to share for sure. So, getting back to call centers, and I know Navis does, digital as well as call centers and a lot of various things for the hotel industry. But we wanted to focus on the call center side of it a lot today because I think that, as you said at the beginning, we've seen it become even more important. So why do you think it is that call centers are more relevant today than ever before?
Well, I think anytime you have a disruption where there's this big question mark and uncertainty of what the guest experience is going to be like, the call center is always going to be, and is certainly today, a key element to that buying process. I think over the years, we've always seen first new guest acquisition, and especially for leisure guests, being heavily focused on voice. And even with the best websites, and there's some amazing website developers out there that have done a great job of creating an online experience, it's very different when you're talking about a leisure stay that is either a high, cost or multi-generation, or even as simple as, just they're shopping, and that higher consideration, right? That's when they're wanting to talk to a reservation sales agent to know what that experience is going to be on property. And so COVID has created this additional environment where there's a lot of uncertainty. And so they're wanting to talk to people that are at the property that can answer those questions about what is the impact in that individual community. Some people are traveling from areas that are still very much shut down, others that are a little bit more opened up. And so, so I think, again, call centers, I don't ever see them going away. But in today's world, like just for example, we're seeing, like in our call center, so we run a call center ourselves. We have over 100 agents, and our call volume is up 48% year over year. And that is
48?
48%. Now, a lot of that could be lack of staffing at the properties because we do a lot of overflow and after
Sure.
hours. So if there's staffing implications, they could be sending more calls to us because they're still trying to level set their staffing. But and looking at individual properties, just what they're seeing, call volume is up. One client was 500% up year over year for one client that we work with. So I do believe that people are they're calling, they're wanting to talk to the property. And interestingly enough, I assumed that the call volume growth was people really wanting to understand about sanitation and those type of things, but that's actually not what we're getting a lot of calls about. I mean, certainly there's an element of that, but I think consumers are expecting that now. So we've done a really good job across our industry of educating on what we're doing for cleanliness and sanitation protocols. But what they're calling about and what they're wanting to talk about is what they're going to experience when they get to the property. Is the pool open? How many people are allowed at the pool? Do I have to make reservations? What dining and outlets are going to be open? Normally we get a free breakfast. Is that free? What's that free breakfast experience going to be like? So anyways, that we're seeing a lot of those type of questions that are coming through to the agents for sure.
Yeah. And I think, interestingly enough, I have looked at a lot of websites out there that don't have FAQs or don't have that information answered for them. So they definitely have to call in to find out what the status is. And then, of course, it changes, right? Things can change on a daily basis right now is definitely what we're seeing. So have you observed any creative methods or strategies that hotels are using to improve conversion, or are you at Navis approaching things any differently than you did in the past?
So as far as creative strategies, I think now more than ever, it's just the strategies that we know work need to be in place. And so a lot of the consulting we're doing is, I know things are tougher right now, but don't pull back on the strategies that we know work and the strategies that you've always been deploying and focusing on. So really working with agents on coaching. I think at the end of the day right now, it's all about communication. So making sure that the agents have the information that they need to communicate effectively to the guests and being able to do that with confidence. Surprisingly, we're seeing conversion actually be fairly steady. Obviously there's peaks, and valleys, and it's never just across the board. But for the most part, what we're finding is being able to effectively explain cancellation policies. And cancellation is something I think we should talk about because we're all dealing with that right now is, you have a great sales day and it's like, great. And then it's like in the back of your mind, it's like, but who's going to cancel and what if they cancel? And because most properties obviously are loosening up cancellation policies to encourage travel. Anyways, we're just seeing, communication being the key right now overall in the sales strategy, and then just making sure that your agents have the right information and can confidently communicate what the expectations are, and understanding it not just at the property level, but within the community as well. So obviously regulations are changing on a daily basis, and being able to communicate that. I myself, because I did build a house, I had to stay in a hotel for 2 weeks, and I stayed at a resort for 1 week, and then a limited service hotel for 3 weeks. And unfortunately, both of these hotels did not do a really great job of communicating during the booking process what the expectations were. And I got there, I knew that they likely weren't doing room cleaning, but what do you do with the trash when at the end of I stayed for 2 weeks. So like I needed communication on what the expectations were, and really both these hotels really struggled with that. So, that is the number one thing, is just really making sure that your frontline operations as well as reservations and everybody knows what the guests can expect. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's going to be so important, for happy guests and repeat guests and whatnot.
So I have a question from the audience. It says, have you been able to provide feedback to the clients about gaps in communication due to the amount of questions the guests may have about amenities? Have you been able to go to your clients and say, hey, we need you to update your content with this information because this is what people need to know?
Yes, we absolutely have. So whether you know, obviously in this situation with our call center, we have a, we call it our res guide, but it's essentially our booking Bible that our agents are accessing in a moment's time to find answers to frequently asked questions. And we encourage our hotels that we work with that are, you know, doing reservations themselves to have something similar, an intranet or something where it's very easy for agents to be able to access that information, and that somebody is responsible for updating it in real time, because there have been, or there are times where literally things are changing by the day, by the week. So making sure that that information is up to date. So we're constantly going out and auditing that, making sure when was the last time this information was updated, always cross-checking to make sure it matches what's on the website so that there isn't any miscommunication across the two different channels. So that's definitely been a big focus of ours, and, you know, being proactive with it, like I said, is key. You can't, for us as a call center, we can't just wait for the property to let us know. We have to help them because, again, staffing's limited and things like that. Because nothing's more frustrating for an agent than not being able to answer a question, and more importantly, not being able to answer the question confidently.
Incorrectly, right? And
Yeah,
giving out
exactly.
that
Exactly.
wrong information,
Yeah, wrong
right?
information,
Because you didn't update it.
Yeah.
No, never. So going on to that cancellation rate, you and I were having a discussion earlier, or maybe it was last week, just about the cancellation rate, and, you know, what are some of the opportunities to try to mitigate that a bit pre-arrival. So, you know, is it possible to manage that via some sort of outbound calling to our arrivals, or some sort of, you know, video that's sent to them, or texting? What are your thoughts around that, and what have you seen in that arena?
Yeah, so cancellation, you know, I'll be honest, I think all across the country, right after the beginning of the pandemic, saw a tremendous amount of cancellations. There'd be days that were, you know, we'd book, you know, right out what was canceling. So it was a net, not a net gain, which obviously isn't great. But what we have seen is, and what we've been really strategizing with our clients on is, again, back to that whole communication thing, is making sure that you're setting the right expectations on the first call. And then depending on the booking window. So that's the other thing we've been seeing, is a much shorter booking window, which makes sense, right? That's not surprising considering how fluid everything is right now. But if you have the luxury with a longer booking window, is getting back in front of the guest before they arrive with a confident messaging around what the guest can expect when they get to the property. So we're seeing that done two different ways. One is through an outbound concierge style call. So we see this a lot more in our resort properties. And I know there's probably people that will watch this and say, I would give anything to have a body to be able to do this, because it takes labor, and we're being crunched right now for labor. But being able to be very strategic with outreach to upcoming guests, making that proactive call, helping with if there is going to be reservations for the pool, helping with what is the limited dining, what is, you know, within the city, how can they assist, transportation. I'll tell you, like, especially in Cabo and some other areas, like, what is the access to transportation to get to the property and get from the property to other areas. So really being able to help with that, being a true vacation planner for those type of properties. Probably going to be a little bit harder with an urban property to be able to do something like that. But an alternate strategy is pre-arrival messaging, right? So, you know, most, whether, you know, you partner with Navis or you have technology that you're using for confirmations, is having that pre-arrival message that's going out at a certain time with as much information as you possibly can, and being very strategic in your timing of it around your cancellation, whether it's 72 hours or 48, you know, everybody has their different windows. So being able to have that has been really helpful in really trying to maintain that. And then having a cancellation recovery strategy too. So once you do have a cancellation, how do we retarget those individuals that we know they obviously had a reason that they were coming? So we have some clients that are doing some really creative strategies with cancellation recovery. Obviously only over certain dates. You don't want to do this to everybody, but if you have cancellations over a need guaranteed period of time, and it's within that right booking window, triggering some sort of whether it be an offer or a value add or something to encourage them to still keep their reservation. But we have started to see this kind of drop off, where we were seeing a lot more cancellations in the beginning. There's been a little bit of shift, we feel, in the consumer and the traveler. The people that are traveling now are the people that they've already got past, they're scarily less worried about COVID. And now they're more into this, okay, I'm going to go. But what's the experience going to be like? So we're getting a lot less, it's just a different change in who the traveler is right now. They're either traveling for business because they're going to travel and they feel confident and comfortable with it, or they're a leisure traveler that knows what the expectations are. And so that's really helped what we've seen with cancellation rates. So I feel like we're approaching the other side, whatever that looks like. I don't want to say we're back to normal, because who knows what normal is now, but it's definitely different.
Yeah, definitely different. I don't want to use the word new normal. I've heard it one too many times, but there is no normal. So I think, we have to work together to be creative around how we tackle this. I was talking to a company yesterday that had reached out to me. They're called Give Magic, and they started out in the nonprofit world with really trying to retain donors after a 90-day period, because nonprofits usually see a drop off after 90 days of giving. And they made it more like, I don't know how to describe it, more TikTok-like, with like videos going out and telling stories of either, patients in the hospital, or of, children that have been fed, or that type of thing. And so Four Seasons actually wanted to work with them on how could they do that with hotel guests, and make it, have them, walk through, this is how we, just 30-second blip of, this is how we clean a room, or this is how we sanitize our elevator, or whatever. And so they have started to send some of those out, and they've, definitely gotten some good feedback around it was making guests feel more comfortable to go ahead and come on their trip versus cancel. So I think that things that we've got to look at are there different ways to communicate? Yes, email is absolutely valid, and we've been saying email is one of the only ways we can communicate right now. But I see these new things coming around that are potentially text and social media, like a different approach to it. And I think we can make it personal too, where you actually have a housekeeper who's your star housekeeper who can walk through that and send it out. So I think we've got to think about what is the innovation that's going to come out of this as a result. And I think call center concierge calls are part of that. I mean, Navis has had that process for years and years and years of the lead database and calling, to book when someone didn't book, and gathering that contact information, which, has resulted in millions of dollars for hotels over the years, right? But I think the service side of it hasn't necessarily been the approach in the past. And I think it's more personal, than a pre-arrival email, and obviously more engaging if they do answer the phone. I remember agents being really worried when you and I worked together on a property in Southern California about calling and people getting mad at them, and we never had that. They were appreciative of it. So I think the same is true here.
Definitely.
So how are call centers being trained to present the sanitization piece of it and cleanliness piece of it? Is it something that is, part of the call without the guest asking? Or is it something where if the guest asks a question, they have an FAQ and they can go answer the guest question? I mean, is it front and center or not really?
It hasn't been front and center, because what we're finding, like I said, it's been really weird. It's where we thought that would be the number one thing that they're bringing up. It's actually not what they're bringing up. The people that are calling now that are looking to stay have already in their head got through the concerns about what that's going to look like. I think that's probably, from even myself who I travel 75% of the time is, I feel like I can't wait to get on an airplane because it's going to be the cleanest that airplane's ever been in my whole entire life.
Yeah.
So there are, people have just a different mentality about it. But how we're working with sales agents on handling this is really what it is it's a new opposition that you have to train agents, a new hurdle that they've got to work around. So where once it was availability and room type, as well as a price, right? Those are typically the things that you're trying to, work your talk track and your sales process around. Those are still obviously relevant. But now we have this additional hurdle and objection, which is the concern about what the on-property amenities are going to be like, the experience at the property, and perhaps a perception of the rate versus the service level that they're going to be getting, right? So now it's all about all the same foundational things are still there. Asking open-ended questions, conveying confidence and pride, making personal recommendations, and really focusing on asking the guests what they're looking for. Why are they coming? Why are they traveling? And then painting a picture of the experience they're going to have and aligning it, but being very open with communication on what they can expect when they get to the property. So, we've seen talk times definitely increase, but not to a monumental level, not to a number that is, when you run a large call center, talk time is a very key metric that you're constantly focusing on, right? Because it impacts your labor and your staffing. But for us, it hasn't been impactful enough. And I do think that's because with the right type of training with the agents on the right questions, you can weave that into the conversation in a way that doesn't add this whole element, to the talk time, if you will.
Yeah. So I have a question from the audience. They said, are you seeing more remote call centers versus traditional coming into a call center to handle the calls now as a result of COVID? I would assume yes, but
yeah, that is absolutely. I think that's probably what the biggest thing that we've been helping our coach our clients around was, especially if the hotel was shut down. So, we work with, over 450, hotels around the country, and as of like the end of May, I think 85% of them were closed, right? So we've been very strategically helping them as they've reopened their hotels and reopened reservations, and reservation sales for many hotels looks very different right now. And at we do a users conference every year, and back in March, I actually led a session on remote agents. And I still remember I had a res manager and a GM sitting in the back of the room, and they were both on opposite sides of the fence on whether or not they should have remote agents. And they were asking some really good and some really tough questions. COVID has created an environment where hotels are trying something that maybe at one point there was opposition, sometimes maybe opposition without a lot of meat behind it. Just this is the way we've always done it.
They need to be in the office.
Yeah, they got to be in the office. We can't do this. And it's forced a different way to look at labor and look at agents. And so that's exactly what we're finding. We have some clients that went completely virtual. And obviously, because they're partners with Navis, we have the technology to help them do that. And all of those things, we've been able to help them prove that, the concerns about remote agents, those aren't valid concerns anymore. And I can tell you, I'm glad I'm not in commercial real estate, because I think our world's going to look very different after COVID as it relates to, where people work and do their jobs. And, with the right technology and the right training and coaching, having remote agents is great. And it does give you that flexibility, where back in the day, it was always about, well, what if we have a hurricane and what do we do? And disaster recovery. Now it's just becoming an SOP of how do we create an environment where we have the staff that we need and can work through some of those things. So yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot more consideration of that. And I think that'll continue into the future for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think the landscape has changed. I don't know that we know where it's going to land, but it certainly has changed for the foreseeable future. I have another question from the audience, and it's being that people are calling and asking about what amenities are available, what's open, what's the on-property experience like, do I have to wear a mask, all those types of questions. are you getting any angry people, and how do you deal with that? How are the agents dealing with the people who have angst about that?
That's a great question that I don't know the answer to, but I can definitely ask the head of our call center. I personally haven't heard that, but I've witnessed it firsthand out and about.
Yes.
So I do know that there's definitely just varying degrees of opinion on how things should be. And I wouldn't be surprised if we aren't getting calls from people who maybe, especially if a hotel is taking it, you know, further because they've made the decision as an organization that they're going to be, you know, on the stricter, you know, spectrum. There's, I would be shocked if there aren't people that maybe don't believe that that's how it should be and perhaps aren't, you know, as nice about it. But I mean, we've all been in hotel operations for so long. We're used to those. You know, we know how to work around it. But I honestly, I don't know the answer to that question, but it's a great question.
Yeah, I've seen on Hospitality Family, you know, some people posting about, you know, just the anger that they're getting over some of the things that are being required and the things that are missing from the experience. And you know, it is hard because we're hospitalitarians, right? We want to give hospitality. We want to do the best for our guest experience, but we also do, you know, have to be safe, and we have to follow governmental regulations, and we also need to follow what our company is saying needs to happen in order to keep our employees and our guests safe. So I'm sure it's, you know, an interesting topic. I wonder, I don't know if you've heard this or not. I certainly haven't, but I just wonder if, you know, any hotel companies have done any sort of de-escalation training, like a focus, like a, you know, even a 30-minute, 20-minute focus on, you know, how do you de-escalate a conversation when it goes the wrong way? Even at the front desk, like what are they doing to help with that? Because I think some people are equipped to deal with that better than others, and we need to give our teams all the tools that they can have in order to be successful and to not feel beat up all day long, right? So that'll be something interesting. I think I'll look into that and see if anyone's doing anything with that. So has the contact center sales strategy has it had to change due to COVID?
No, I mean, like I said, it really is all about just those foundational, you know, our agents go through a very, you know, specific call flow. And we do have a team of dedicated agents that only do Forbes. So they're focused on the Forbes standards. So obviously, you know, different call flows, right, that we're training our sales agents, and then, you know, clients that work with Navis, where we're helping them with their on-site reservation sales environment. We're coaching them around best practices on calls and sales training and everything like that. And those foundational strategies have not changed. They are still there. It's just, we now have this new element of the expectation setting and the implications of COVID that have to be weaved in. So we're definitely having to do a lot more to keep our agents motivated. I think that's probably the biggest thing is, I mean, all of us as individuals have gone through this crazy roller coaster, right, of the highs and lows, and you know, how it's impacted us personally. And agents are dealing with those same things. And so they're having to have those conversations on a daily basis, where maybe some of us aren't, other people aren't. And so making sure that we're really working with them and creating an environment. We have found that we're doing more team meetings with the agents than we normally have. We have changed incentive programs slightly with the agents. So just really keeping them energized and motivated right now is so critical, because you know, they are that front line. So really role playing and all of those different things, I think is now more important than ever.
So that's a good point, incentive programs. So Stacy, you know, how have you changed that? Because, you know, when everything was canceling, I mean, they're still having to take all these calls, but incentive programs usually aren't based on, you know, converting at 0%, right? I mean, not that you're converting at zero, but you know what I mean, like net, right? So it's like, what are some of the things that seem to work now from an incentive approach?
Well, we still have all of the same, we always will focus on conversion incentives, revenue incentives,
Sure.
right? So that always should be a key element to it. But I do think that there are different ways to incent agents based on things. We always believe that you should incent agents based on things that they have control over. Nothing's more frustrating than being incented on something that you can't change. As an individual or as an agent. So working with them on like specifically with call flow or being able to go back and listen to how they're handling calls and how they're handling the COVID response and the answering of the questions. And then if there are things that they have to communicate on every call that is really important, whether it be the cancellation policy, whether it be communication around the expectation of the amenities, but being able to isolate those behavioral patterns that you're expecting of the agents and incent them based on those, in addition to the other things, which are things that they may not be able to control. They can't control call volume. They can't control, they can control conversion to a certain point, things like that. We also do a lot, of course, at Navis, we're big believers in data capture, whether those individuals book or not. So we're always going to make sure that that's a big element of the incentive plan, making sure that they are finding out, what the dates that guest was interested in, why they aren't booking, as much information as we can, because that's really important. So making sure that we have, incentives around those things. So I would say for the most part, it's those foundational things really haven't changed, but then doing special incentives based on,
certain areas. Maybe.
Yeah, certain areas, right, exactly, with the call. Obviously, upselling and things like that. There's a lot of different things that, that we can, with the right data and insight, you can create some really compelling incentive programs that drive the behavioral change that you're looking for.
Right. Cool. Great. So what is the best way for hotels to keep track of leads that come into the call center? I mean, I know Navis has a great way. Oh, yes. I think that your lead system is certainly something that I've certainly had personal great success with in the past. So I kind of led that question out there, but how does Navis do that? I mean, not to give away your secret sauce, but I mean, what do you
obviously do? Navis, we can help with it, but I'll kind of start with just kind of the foundational piece that I think every hotel needs to think about. And it was interesting at HDC, right? There's a lot of talk, right, about, demand and really, kind of digging in to understand how a market is doing and what they can expect. And, a lot of times we hear demand just being pace, pickup, and bookings. And at the end of the day, that's not in what I believe, that's not demand. Demand is what is the total potential you had to stay at your hotel. And so if let's just say an agent, typically across the industry, 30 to 40, 45% conversion, depending on the market that you're in, of bookable calls, which I got to clarify, take out the changes, modifications, and cancellations, but just bookable calls. If you're able to convert at those levels, that's 5 to 6 guests that are having interaction with your property that are not booking for some reason. And they could be shoppers, they could be, there's a lot of different things that those individuals represent, but that's your low hanging fruit, because if they don't book with you, they're going to pick up the phone and call your competitor down the street. They wouldn't be calling if they didn't have an interest in staying in the market. So even if you have to put it in an Excel spreadsheet, we encourage that you capture that information. But I think now more than ever, if you don't have a partner like Navis, use your turndowns and regrets, right? Every PMS system, every CRS has the ability, and I know it's a pain to create that new profile and put that in there and put the turndown of why you didn't get that booking. But that is so important to really understanding what your true demand is and being able to have those insights and information to be able to, give it to revenue management and give it to marketing to know why people aren't booking. And we do have COVID, turndown, look at your turndown reasons and being able to have those in there to understand, but being able to tie it back to a guest is the most important piece. And so that's why PMS systems, again, they're they do have this tool to be able to do it, but you can't force the agents to use it. And most often you can't really tie it back to specific dates, specific room types, unless you have the agent forcing putting that information in. So yeah, being able to, I mean, I've seen clients pre-Navis, even, you know, agents having a notebook or having sticky notes on repeat guests or maybe high stay, you know, value guest that's talking about a suite for 7 days. Like, I want to call this person back. You know, but even if you have to use Excel and Outlook to capture that and do some sort of follow-up on them, it's critical. Or that email capture, right? Getting that email so you can feed it into your database. And, you know, again, just to put it in perspective of what that can mean revenue-wise, we actually looked at a sample size of hotel clients that we work with and tried to monetize, you know, what this looked like for them during the pandemic specifically. Now, obviously some of these, you know, but it was something like 1,200 and something leads that came in during a period of time. 619 of them didn't book, and then being able to actually retarget them was like $955,000 based on a $1,500 average stay value. That was revenue that these hotels, if they didn't have Navis, they would have lost because they didn't capture that data and information. So now more than ever, it's extremely important to be capturing that information and looking at your demand differently than maybe you know how a hotel typically does. So.
Right. Yeah. And I think, you know, for years and years and years and years, you know, we've had call centers, and rarely has any hotel considered all those calls that were coming in asking for availability and rooms like a lead that they could follow up on, kind of like group leads, right? So I think it's you know, something that hotels that do optimize this and do focus on this perform better, and they find it's found revenue that just kind of leaked out the door because there was no follow-up on it in the past. And so, you know, I think it's something that hotels definitely need to consider doing if they're not doing right now. I do have another question. Let's see. Do the agents have to keep up with the list of quarantines that are going on, like what states and what are the requirements? Like New York changes their list of states every single day. Based on numbers, some formula that they have. So how do agents keep up with that stuff?
Well, so that's where I mentioned it earlier, like for our call center anyways, our res guide is what we use, and that is, and we do rely on the properties. So the biggest thing is, you know, and it's like there needs to be like a communication person. Like, their responsibility is to help communicate internally what the changes are, because they are literally changing by the moment. And I do think, though, that a lot of hotels have been really smart at with their marketing initiatives, whether it be e-commerce, digital marketing, email marketing, targeting the areas that have, you know, whether it's drive market, right? So just being really strategic of where they're trying to get in front of potential guests that are going to have the least impact on quarantines and things like that. You know, it's been amazing seeing some, especially like some of our Hawaii clients who literally had to change their strategy overnight as they're starting to reopen, and where are consumers going to, or where travelers going to be coming from, and whether it be inter-island, you know, marketing to get people inter-island, but really just kind of shifting their budget and their strategy to go after the markets that they know have, you know, that there's that least barrier, you know, the smallest barrier to coming on property. So I think that's really key. But yeah, again, you know, back to whether, you know, if you partner with Navis, keep your terms up to date so that we know all of those things. And then the other being, if, you know, having, you know, I remember back when I was on property, we had a book. You know, we didn't have, I'm dating myself, but we didn't have, you know, internets and things like that. We literally had a book where every day, you know, it was up on the board or it was in the book that you could go to very quickly to get that information, because that's really important. But, and also thank goodness for the internet to be able to access a lot of that stuff easier too. So we do a lot of links to different, you know, guidelines on, you know, certain areas as well, to make it just really easy for the agents to get to.
Yeah, makes sense. I think it's crucial that hotels, and I know many of them lack a lot of furloughed employees right now, but we've got to be able to have accurate content so that we can communicate correctly, because that miscommunication at the time of reservation or when someone calls pre-arrival could really seriously impact their stay and impact the front desk upon check-in if we get it wrong, right? So, it's really important that somebody is at the property is responsible for making sure that we know what's going on in their particular region. Mm-hmm. It's hard to keep up with in some areas, but
it is, especially in the Northeast right now.
I know, right? Yeah. It changes every day. I get on a plane Friday to actually fly back to New York, and my state is not on the naughty list right now, and I'm certainly hoping it doesn't get on there. I think our numbers are on the way down, so we shouldn't, but it makes me a little bit nervous. I'm like, well, what if I land and all of a sudden they say now there's a 14-day quarantine? Like, what am I going to do? The next question I have for you is how do you think digital and call center can partner together more closely to improve the guest experience and to manage to convert more?
Well, we are at Navis big believers that reservation sales, revenue, and marketing, like one team. And it is, of course, I consult with hotels all the time, and there still is a lot of challenges, I think, across those two departments. And I think marketing across most hotels has had a pretty big impact, right, with budget, staff and things like that. So having the ability, obviously, to be able to to actually execute, I think is key and a struggle, I think, for some hotels right now. But this is a pretty unique time where I think every hotel is going to be leaning on leisure business more than they ever have in the past, with a lot of the impacts, obviously, to group and corporate travelers. So leisure, that it's a different beast, if you will, when it comes to marketing. Again, I think it goes back to communication and being able to really provide marketing with the right information on what callers or what is, obviously making sure that they know your need periods, but then second is like, what is the demographic that's booking right now? Like who's booking? So repeat guests? Is it, like where are we getting our client or our stay base right now from, and how do we go get more of that? So I think more important than anything is really making sure that marketing is hearing directly from reservation sales. What are the questions that people are asking? What promotions, or if you are doing promotions, what promotions are resonating? Not necessarily just what's booking, because you can track that with source codes, but what got the phone to ring in the first place? Right. So really making sure they have a good understanding of attribution on what actually is booking and what's working. And let's do more of that. And then making sure, obviously, that the communication is lining up and that we're sending, messages to guests who are the right guests, right, to be able to book. And we're not sending, messages to people that are in states that can't travel or things like that. So I think, being able to really isolate that right target audience, both from the digital marketing and all the e-commerce side. So I encourage all marketers, talk to reservations. If you partner with Navis and you have call recordings, listen to call recordings, listen to the guests. Nothing helps a marketer better than knowing what the guest is actually saying. What is the guest looking for? And then taking that and weaving that into the marketing that they're doing. Give them like you mentioned, the website's not having that, get that stuff on the website, because that just helps the agents. That helps. Those are all of the things that are going to help convert a booking. And, if you're going to drive them to the website, great. Let's just make sure that, that information is presented there for them and help protect the agents with bookable calls, not having to answer questions that could have been answered on the website.
Well, and I think if you look at your call center as a gold mine of leads, it puts a different slant on it. And the fact that I know with the Navis system, you have the ability of capturing both the phone number and the email, and then, you know, the agents have the ability to go send an email to that customer, but that email can also funnel into, you know, your email database as a lead. So, you know, I think that being able for marketers to not look at the call center as, oh, that's old fashioned, but to look at it as, you know, this is a very valuable source of customer acquisition for us, and of someone that we can really build that relationship with long term, especially if we can identify, you know, when they were calling, what they were calling for, and then get that into the cycle of guest communication, you know, whether that be anniversary, birthday, vacation, you know, a business trip, whatever it be, right? So I think that that I know in my past, again, marketing didn't necessarily look at it that way for many, many years. But I think we have to look at our call centers as just a gold mine of guest information. And I don't know if I've ever had a marketing person actually sit and listen to guest recorded calls. So that's a great idea, because you typically you do have recordings, and you should be able to go back to listen to them and kind of hear what are the guests asking. And you can also find out, you know, one thing that I've done in the past with sales and marketing and the call center is meet with them to say, hey, what's missing? Like, what are the questions you're being asked all the time? And, you know, what do we need to improve from a content perspective, because you're hearing it from the guest? Or, you know, give me that feedback on that package, because maybe I'm missing a piece of it that, you know, if someone's always saying, well, why doesn't it include breakfast? And well, then include breakfast in that package if that's what the guest really wants with that particular offer. So I think, you know, that they're talking to guests one-on-one, right? Nobody else is doing that until they check in. Right. So it's, you know, it's the first point of contact often that a guest has, and it's a place where you can garner a lot of valuable information.
Yeah, we don't even the term call center sometimes is hard, right? Like, I really look at it as a revenue center, right? It's a revenue center. It's a reservation sales
center,
you know, and but just because when you hear call center, you think of, you know, headsets and they're answering, you know, how to put something together type questions, right? And it really, like, just, you know, creating that environment where reservations and the call center is looked at as a revenue center. Like, they're such a key piece of bringing revenue to the business. If you can elevate that, I think one, you get more out of your team if you do that. Yeah. And then, you know, at the end of the day, obviously you know, it impacts revenue for the hotel for sure. So.
Absolutely. And, you know, typically these days they're handling chat and email responses and really all guest contact. So, you know, it's important to realize that, again, they're the ones that are having the opportunity to communicate directly with our guests before they arrive, typically. And it's important for us to know what those conversations are and what guest needs are. So I've just got a couple more questions. We've got just a few more minutes. How do you ensure that reservation sales agents have effective sales skills? What does that process look like? How are they selling instead of order taking?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you probably won't be surprised to hear this, but it really starts at the hiring phase. And I will tell you, obviously, and I wish our director of call center was on here, because he could tell you, you know, stories. We've been doing this a long time. So it definitely is, you know, art and science when you're interviewing to try and get the right person that is that's going to be successful at doing this, because it is there's such a big line between sales and service, and this is where sometimes I think there's a struggle when when hotels have front desk agents being reservations as well, and I understand the reasoning when most hotels do that, and it almost always comes back to labor and cost, but it takes a very different personality functionality to be able to do reservation sales and then that customer service piece, right? Because it really, the flow of which how the conversation needs to go. So we do an immense amount of skill testing on the front end when we're hiring agents to make sure that we're hiring agents that have the right skill set that matches that they're an influencer. So we use some cool things like predictive index and others that really get into kind of behaviors and whatnot to make sure that somebody is more natural at having that confidence to do that. Being able to confidently talk about price, that, you know, to have a financial conversation around, you know, presenting rates and things like that. So it really does go to, you know, hiring the right people and then the training that you take them through,
Yep.
and the role play and really being able to help them with having uncomfortable conversations and being able to overcome those objections and feeling very confident in their responses and tonality. And so there's a lot of things, but it really starts with hiring the right people. And I can't tell you, you know, there's been so many times where, you know, we maybe have partnered with a hotel that was really looking to take reservation sales to the next level and maybe had a long tenured staff that had been there a really long time and thought, I've got the best sales agents ever. Like, you know, Molly, she's been here 25 years and she knows the property like the back of her hand. But when you get into it, really, she was an order taker and she booked a lot because she took a lot of calls, and it really wasn't the fact that she was a really good salesperson. And so once you get in there and you start to really coach around that refinement of positioning product and, you know, selling the right, you know, walking the guest to the room type that you want them to book, based on availability and cross-selling, which is a big thing. If you have multiple property, being able to do that effectively, it really goes back to coaching. So it's hiring the right people to have the right skill set. And then it's that ongoing, consistent coaching and training and not letting your foot off the gas, even with agents that have been with you a really long time. Now, you're probably not going to spend as much time with them as you are a brand new agent, but still making sure that you're constantly refreshing their sales skills, whether you know, bring in Aspire or Signature, you know, to do that on a consistent basis, and then having a partner like Navis making sure that you're staying consistent with it, right? The coaching and training. You bring in the sales skills and then you're consistently training. That's that perfect marriage, and that's where you're going to get the highest conversion out of your agents. And measuring, you can't manage what you can't measure, so you've got to measure. And so making sure you have data, right? So making sure you're looking at conversion on a daily basis, and if it starts to slip, why, and make sure you're digging into all of those things.
Yeah, and by agent, not just the call center, right? So
exactly.
you know, when
you're at the agent level, one agent in their conversion can mean several $100,000 annually to a hotel. So
right. And it's important that agents understand that as well. Like, what, you know, if you booked 2 more reservations a day, what would that look like to the bottom line, right? So understanding what that contribution is from a revenue standpoint. So I have 2 more questions. One came from the audience. What do you think about outsourced overseas voice reservation sales centers versus having them based in the U.S.?
Oh my gosh, that's I can tell you that at Navis, we only have US based agents. And we've made a very strategic decision to do that because it allows us to manage all the time zones and everything that we have. But yeah, I would want to know more about why whoever's asking the question to understand a little bit better. I do think, I mean, you know, when call centers have overseas, you know, agents, they may be able to, control costs. And I believe that when you're looking for an outsourced partner, cost shouldn't be the number one factor, performance should. So if you feel like you can find a call center that outsources and has calls in another country and that you have that same commitment to quality, and that's conversion and revenue, you know, I haven't seen that myself, but if it's out there, but I do think that at the end of the day, you want to find a partner that your guest, it should be completely, they should have no idea that you're talking to somebody in Florida if your resort is in Napa Valley. It should be completely transparent. There should be no reason that they would ever question that you're not at the property. And if you get that right level of skill and quality from your partner, you know you found the right partner.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So last question. If you were leading a reservation sales center today, I just lost, my screen went dark there. If you're leading a reservation sales center today, what are 3 actions you would take immediately to be certain your team is successful?
Yeah, we'll sum up pretty much what we talked about. So number one, make sure that your agents are informed of any COVID-related issues in real time. They should not be, they should be the first to know of anybody, making sure that they have that. Focus, and number 2, focus and build value around what you have to offer. Don't focus on what you can't offer. Focus on what you can offer, and make sure that that is weaved into painting that picture and setting that experience for that potential guest. So focus on that. And then creative ways to rally your team. I think, you know, agents, you know, again, they've gone through this huge roller coaster. So what are the things that can keep your agents motivated, excited as they hammer through calls every single day, and that they're having to have calls that are just different than what they, you know, traditionally have had to do. So whatever that needs to look like. So whether it be changing the way you compensate your agents, you know, doing creative incentive programs, giving them more breaks, doing, you know, creative fun prize wheels and things like that to keep them constantly motivated, and focusing on, you know, the behaviors that you're looking for, whether it be room type positioning, rate positioning, just simple conversion, because we just need the occupancy, whatever that is. Make sure that your programs for your agents are all designed around that. And then at the end of the day, that's, you know, and then celebrate them, celebrate the successes on a regular basis, because like I said, leisure is going to be the driver for a while now. So let's make sure that we take care of the people that can make it happen for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Stacy, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a great conversation.
Yes.
And I think you gave some excellent advice and insights to our audience. And, you know, this is recorded, so this will be going out to a lot more people, and will be available on YouTube and as well as on our website. We are going to take a couple-week break as we're coming up to Labor Day, and we'll be resuming in mid-September. But again, we really appreciate you joining us, and you know, stay strong, stay well. I hope you get to travel soon.
I'm counting the days. I'm counting the days.
I know. I've got less than 2. Yeah, I've got less than 2 days. So, and you know, the last conference I came home from was Navis on March 4th, and you know, I look back at that and go, I can't believe that was the last time I traveled, was to the Navis conference. And at least we had a lot of fun at that conference. And
yes, silver lining, all this family time has, I mean, none of us thought we'd get this much amazing family time. So silver lining for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, you take care, stay safe, stay well. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.